Hello, Canada. Welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias the Guy. Well, I have had hundreds upon hundreds of people requesting I share a lot of the information that I talk about on different social media platforms. So I'm going to try and do a two-part series. I don't know if I have time tonight. I've been working just collecting a lot of this information in order to be able to present it to you in a quick episode, which is really difficult. I'm just going to start off by using Michael Barrett. He had a presser yesterday, and while I was playing in the background, a lot of what he was saying as I was slowly building these files, it dawned on me that it was kind of a perfect clip. So I went back and listened to it a couple more times, and I thought, you know what, this is a perfect clip because he's doing the job of the reporters without telling reporters they're idiots, and the reporters doing questions that are insulting themselves. Now, I'm only going to play a small portion of it just to kind of give us a video intro and outro to this video, so it's not just a pile of reading, because most of the stuff that is out there on Carney, the evidence is all in paper form. It's not like you'll find it in videos, especially since mainstream media pretty much owns the video end of the spectrum. It's hard to find any good information out there in video form. And even though I like to push independent media and small media like myself, there's a lot of small media. You really got to watch out what you're looking at, people. I see some of them out there, they got piles of views, and they lie. Like, they really do, they lie. Make sure you check their evidence like I do. I always put all of my homework and evidence below. The only evidence I don't share is the documents that I get sent to me from whistleblowers or certain people who are breaking stories or trying to look for certain things that may use my help. And sometimes I will share that, and I will show kind of a portioned off part of the email, but I won't give them away. You can't do that, especially in a socialist country like what we've become. Whistleblowers are the number one hunted enemy of socialism. If we had a real democracy, we'd have a lot more whistleblowers like the one I'm going to show you at the end of this episode. So without further ado, let's just kind of get started. And like I said, I'm going to use Michael Barrett in order to kind of carry off. And this is going to be at least a two-part. I'm probably going to have to do 3 or 4 parts to try and keep the videos fairly short. But yeah, let's just kind of take off from here. And hopefully I broke this down to layman terms enough for everybody to kind of comprehend how evil Mark Carney is and the Liberal Party.
Good morning. We're here today because Mark Carney has failed to come clean with Canadians about his financial interests and his conflicts of interest. Now, we know that he's had opportunities to do that and has failed to. He hasn't answered media questions fully or honestly, and this is reminiscent for anyone who's been following Mark Carney over the last few months when it comes to his responses on his relationship with Brookfield Asset Management. Now, when asked about his relationship with Brookfield, first of all, he said that he had no role in Brookfield moving their headquarters and jobs from Canada to New York City. But we know that that was a lie.
And that was a lie. I showed you the documents on a previous episode. And again, the media is not talking about this. Considering that all happened before the Liberal Party election, 20 years ago, he would have had his butt kicked to the curb for lying that blatantly. And that was only one of 5 different lies that he got busted with before he was even elected as the leader of the Liberal Party, which he then ascertained the power of the prime ministerial chair of Canada. So something for you to think about right off the hop on proof your media is propaganda.
And when it comes to his connections now with Brookfield, Mr. Carney won't say what his financial interests are, saying only that he's put his assets into a blind trust. Now, that might work for regular stocks. But what we have here is Mark Carney's benefiting from assets that generate carried interest. The $15 billion Global Transition Fund, the $10 billion Second Global Transition Fund, and the $2.4 billion Catalytic Transition Fund. And I want to offer a quote from the CEO of Brookfield Asset Management. Put simply, carried interest is our share of the profits realized on an entire fund, subject to that fund exceeding a minimum target return for clients. If we meet fund expectations, we get 20% of the profits. That's from the CEO of Brookfield Asset Management. Now, why does that matter? When it comes to public office holders, like the Prime Minister and like ministers, they're supposed to recuse themselves from anything that would cause them to be in a conflict of interest. Anywhere they could take a decision that would improve their financial interests. Now, Mark Carney has shown that in the past, he's willing to take decisions that put his own profits ahead of people. Like I just mentioned, with the moving of Brookfield's headquarters from Canada to New York City. The express purpose of that was to increase profits for himself. And when he was advising Justin Trudeau as the senior economic advisor, sitting in the Prime Minister's office, advising him when Brookfield Asset Management had interest in heat pumps, what did he advise Justin Trudeau to do? To push heat pumps.
Now, this isn't the first time he's done this. On part two, I'm going to deal with his assessment, his report card that came out from World Finance on what he did as the bank governor of England, which was a resounding F failure. But I'm going to show you an article about what he did with his heat pumps in England as well. Evil is as evil does. Labour advisor Mark Carney lobbied Reeves for heat pump subsidies. Former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney lobbied ministers to relax the rules on heat pump subsidies to benefit the asset management business he chairs, it has been claimed. Mr. Carney, a Labour advisor who has helped Rachel Reeves with the creation of the National Wealth Fund, raised the idea of changing the cash for heat pump installation scheme with the Chancellor, according to Richard Harpen. Mr. Harpen is the founder and former chief executive of HomeServe. Now, that's its chairman. The plumbing and heating company was bought by Brookfield Asset Management, which is chaired by Mr. Carney, for €4.1 billion in 2022. Discussions with Mr. Reeves are said to have revolved around changes to the governor's $450 million boiler upgrade scheme so that companies could claim taxpayer subsidies to install heat pumps in homes. Such a change would benefit HomeServe, which specializes in home plumbing and heating cover for homes plus boiler installations. It goes on and on and on. Mark Carney was advising our Prime Minister and the Liberal Party, and they brought these policies in. But not only did he do it, which again I'll expose more in part two, to make himself billions of dollars in profit, he also did it in order to buy votes. Do you remember the carbon cutout for the East Coast, Atlantic Canada? The guaranteed subsidies that they were calling and mailing out and force feeding down all of Atlantic Canada's throats? Those are his companies. You buy from those companies and you get a tax rebate. The tax rebate comes out of all of Canada's taxes that we pay. And then his company makes record profits. Do you understand how this works? This is only one little scheme I'm going to expose. This is only part one, and we're just getting started. Let's continue.
And that's exactly what Justin Trudeau did, increasing profits for Mark Carney. The problem is that Mark Carney knows that these funds exist. In fact, he set them up. So he knows exactly the decisions that he needs to take as Prime Minister to increase his financial benefit. And saying that they're in a blind trust means that he's not going to recuse himself from any of the decisions that would lead to him increasing the financial benefit to himself. Basic transparency requires Mark Carney to confirm to Canadians, to answer questions that have been put to him by the media about what his assets are, to confirm that he will benefit from these carried interest assets, to confirm what's in his blind trust, because he knows, and he's going to continue to know that when he's making and taking decisions. The basic level of transparency that's required and the right thing to do, because Mark Carney says he has nothing to hide. So if he has nothing to hide, then it's very easy for him to come forward today and to disclose to Canadians, to finally answer media's questions about what his financial interests are and what those conflicts of interest are, because that's what Canadians expect. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett, is it your allegation that Mr. Carney got into...
Now listen to how repulsively stupid these media questions are after what he just said, and after just the one little clip I've shown so far, that the media should be doing their job and informing Canadians about how corrupt this man is. Instead, you hear crap like this.
politics to get rich? Wouldn't it just make more sense for him to stay at Brookfield if he was only interested in making money?
I think Mr. Carney has shown that he's willing to use whatever position he has to further his financial interests.
He literally just mentioned the heat pumps. And this propaganda media outlet, this so-called journalist, just completely ignored the truth of what he just said about the heat pumps. Twisted it to make it seem as though Carney is the right one. Like, what do you expect him to give up his money? Like, just hand over all his... That's not... Where did this question even come from? These guys are propaganda arm of the socialist government.
So as chair of Brookfield, he was also advising the government and advising them to take decisions that improved his financial position. When he was on the board at Stripe, we saw the same thing, with Stripe being shielded from the government when they were refusing to pass on savings to small businesses when they were required to cut their fees. And he'll help out his friends, like we saw with his decision or his relationship with the chair or the owner of Telesat, and the government taking a decision to award more than $1 billion to Telesat immediately after Mark Carney was named the senior economic advisor to Justin Trudeau.
Now, Telesat. This is a company that has been funneled billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, even before the hate that they are trying to push, this bullcrap hate they're trying to push on Elon Musk, in order for them to keep control of Canadians' media. We have what's called the CRTC. Now, in a few communities that I've lived in, and cities, other radio stations and TV channels have tried to put in bids in order to ascertain the right, which is permission, to start their own channel because a space became available or the population grew and it now allowed for more media. Pretty bad when the government actually manipulates how much media you can get, right? That tells you right there you're living in a semi-socialist state. Now, in one place in particular, the actual city, small city, seen this happen before through time, and they wrote petitions and they started signing and they were like, we want this guy to have a radio station. He's from the area. He doesn't belong to any affiliate. He's giving us a station that by popular demand is what we wanted, which at the time was a rock station, because all they had was a country and what they call bubblegum rock, which is like crap. And he wanted to promote Canadian content because in that area we had a lot of really good bands that weren't getting airtime. So the entire community came together and they were like petitioning the government, the CRTC. Hey, this guy. What did they do? They gave it to the same owners who own the other two popcorn channels that everybody hates. They hate it. Nobody listened to it. And then satellite radio came and it just took off, and now local media is completely gone. That was all because of decisions made by the government in order to push this socialist, you're going to listen to what we say. This is CRTC. Well, this satellite company is going to run through those regulations, whereas Starlink doesn't. Yes, they have to meet certain criteria because if I'm using Google or if I'm using YouTube, they are censored to the max, in which they are censored. And I've tested this on my channel. I've literally tested this. I do the whole scientific theory. I tested it. And I would watch myself, and it had a slow gain, and I checked all my lines. I came up with the perfect equilibrium. I knew exactly where I should be on the next one. I said a certain word, and I watched all of my push be squashed. I then rebuilt it back up again, carried another constant, and I tried a couple other words and watched my channel get squashed. Now, I'm not even being regulated by the CRTC. This is already past that. This is into the next aspect, which is all of these bills that are being passed on censorship. You are living in a socialist country, whether you like to admit it or not. That is socialism. You don't have the right anymore to take a box, stand on a corner, and speak your mind. You could be taken to jail and charged. All it takes is for somebody to say, well, I think that's hate speech. You're gone. We have no freedom of speech here. We have no First Amendment. We never have. This is the reality. Now, let's move on to Telesat. A few months ago, Trudeau came out with this promise because he's trying to push this Telesat, which they've already invested billions of dollars in, which, by the way, it is a Canadian company whose major shareholders are all elitist globalists. One of the largest being Brookfield. They've already taken billions of dollars, and now they have the perfect opportunity using their media, their propaganda arm, with this whole fake hate. This is propaganda, fear, hate, and division. And they're using it to gain votes, which is huge in the East. And like I said, the heavily populated areas are those least likely to get real media. They live in a bubble. This is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe, to get the word to these people to pop that bubble and allow a lot of us small independents to get in there who show their proof, who show the documents, who show all the homework, unclipped, unedited, so that if at any point in time there's some disbelief, oh, this guy's, they can click on the links below and watch it for themselves, or read the article, or actually a lot of the documents, which I'm going to be throwing lots of documents. And I hope that you all dig deep and read and see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Welcome to the Tinfoil Club. So the Prime Minister himself even put this out. Right here's Prime Minister of Canada. And he threw this out that 95% of Canada was going to have high-speed internet before 2026. And then in a presser, he said he upped it to 98%. So I'm going to show you how huge the censorship is and the transparency of your Liberal government. Here is the Prime Minister page. I was able to open this right when he announced it. This is what I do. I was like, oh, interesting. That's all bullcrap. And now, I'm sorry, you're not authorized to access this page. Gone. Wiped. They want you to forget. They don't want a trail. They are hiding everything that they can. And they've been doing this since 6 months after they got in office, once they started to get their foothold and take over all branches of government. And they've done it. Look at the Senate. What a joke. If ever anybody was got an argument to why we should have an elected Senate, now, I mean, there is no argument against it anymore. We need an elected Senate. This is ridiculous. It doesn't matter where I go. And I used to tour across Canada lots, and even now I still travel lots. Like here, I'm in Ontario, I'll be in Saskatchewan, I'll be in Alberta, I'm all over the place. Everywhere I go, there's no representatives in the Senate that are actually people that those areas would vote for. And I shouldn't say that. There's maybe 3 or 4, but I've never been to those areas. They're all appointed lefties. They're all loonies. These people should never be they should never be in the Senate. We're controlled. It's a socialist. We live in a socialist. Socialist. Welcome to socialism. I can't say it enough. Let's just keep on going. Listen to a little bit more.
So it seems like whatever position Mark Carney is in, he uses it to improve the financial benefit to himself, and that's why the transparency that we're calling for is essential.
What do you want him to do? Do you want him to give up this money that comes from the carried interest? Like, concretely, what would satisfy you?
Mr. Carney needs to be transparent with Canadians.
Did you hear that question again? The stupidity of these reporters. And if they don't get the answer they want, you don't see any of this. They're trying to set a trap for him so that they can throw that on the evening news and pound the loudspeaker out to the heavily, densely populated areas that control the entirety of our nation.
Now, if he wants to avoid the conflict of interest, he should divest, and not divest into a blind trust. It would mean that he would need to sell those assets, not to forfeit those assets or the payments that come from these carried interest assets to him. But the fact is right now, when he's been asked if he is going to be a beneficiary of these funds, he's refused to say. And so, first of all, we need to know what the truth is, which is always hard to know when you're getting answers from Mark Carney. And then he needs to do the right thing and to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest. Look, these Liberals have broken Canadians' trust after 9 years. They've been a government of serial ethical lawbreakers. Justin Trudeau, twice found guilty of breaking this very law. We had Dominic LeBlanc. We had Mary Ng. We had the former finance minister, Bill Morneau. We had the parliamentary assistant to the Prime Minister, Greg Fergus.
And don't forget Ng, paid by the Chinese Communist government. The one that we know for sure. There's still 10 more in the Liberal Party that they refuse to tell us. And we're going to go into an election with 11 representatives who were put into positions by the CCP because of the way that they feel towards the CCP. They're not Canadian. We need to know who these people are.
They all disregarded this law. And so we need to see from Mark Carney, instead of non-answers, full disclosure.
Do you think the Prime Minister should call an election right away?
First of all, Parliament should have been sitting since the last week of January. These doors have been padlocked by the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, trying to avoid the accountability and the scrutiny that comes with a sitting Parliament. So we had a performative scene with Mr. Carney claiming to cancel a law all by himself the first day that he was sworn in. But that's not how it works here in Canada. Only Parliament can pass and rescind laws.
And the media is trying to cover their trails because they got caught on a hot mic because they knew this. But did they talk about it? No. Instead, they went on this whole Carney campaign. Look at him, he just signed the carbon tax. Well, now Polyev hasn't got a hope in hell. Ha ha ha. I guess we don't need the Conservatives anymore. Ha ha ha. And then all of a sudden the video went viral of a hot mic with all of these same media people saying, well, that doesn't really mean shit, does it? Because it's still, they need Parliament. They need, well, you just won't talk about it. I played the video in a previous episode. Please feel free, scroll through my episodes. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe.
And these are the kinds of things that should be debated and passed in Parliament. Look, Conservatives have called for Parliament to be sitting so that we could pass a plan that puts Canadians first, to pass a big bring-it-home tax cut for Canadians, to repeal the Liberals' anti-energy laws like Bill C-69, to tear down interprovincial trade barriers, to remove taxes like the carbon tax permanently, like the tax on new home construction. But two things can be true at the same time. If the government isn't prepared to pass legislation that puts Canada first, then Canadians should decide in an election. And so while Parliament should have been sitting, Conservatives are saying that if the Carney-Trudeau Liberals aren't prepared to put Canada first by passing that legislation in the House of Commons, then it's time to take that to Canadians in an election.
Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you a little clip. Now, this is the new finance minister, the Chihuahua, who studied at the WF like the rest of the Liberals, where half of the parliament, half of the party has been infiltrated. That is literally the words of Klaus Schwab, the ruler of the WEF. Listen to propaganda at its best.
So, Mr. Perkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, the CEO of Telesat, who is a close personal friend of the new Liberal Finance Minister, Mark Carney, was given over 800,000 shares in Telesat in 2021. Are you aware of that?
I don't understand your question. You refer to people who don't have the capacity that you refer to.
You don't understand that the CEO was given 800,000 shares of his own company?
I do not understand the comments you made before about the finance minister.
I'll move on then, since you don't seem to be aware of the CEO's compensation when you gave him $2 billion recently. Are you aware that because of your announcement and the stock appreciation, he's got another 360,000 shares that are now in the money? So the total of all of that value is $21 million that's gone up for the CEO, Daniel Goldberg, since your announcement. Are you aware of that?
You know, I'd hope you would care as much about.
Now listen carefully. This is propaganda. This is schooled propaganda 101. Everything that comes out of this lying Chihuahua's mouth, he's been educated to do. It takes a lot of practice to be this good of a liar, to be this good of a deceiver.
About the CEO and the workers that we are providing a future at building 2 satellites a day. You focus a lot on one.
By the way, this is old, still 0 satellites. Lie.
Person as opposed to focusing on workers in the industry, Mr. Perkins.
Second lie. Obscure from the question and make it seem as though the person who has the question is wrong by even questioning it. And how do you do so? You use democracy, you use compliment, you use the worker, the taxpayer, and the country's pride. Along kind of, the book's a lot deeper than that. I've read many of them, but this, I mean, really, Stalin would be proud.
I think that you should see that as a way for us to protect national security. And for you not to acknowledge
Country.
that we are going to have a own network of LEO satellite in Canada, I think Canadians are watching at home are wondering why you focus on one and not focus on them.
They're wondering
Workers,
why it
Canadians.
is that Liberals are enriching themselves to the point of $21 million on a company that isn't paying back any of the $5 billion of loans that you've given them. When you made this latest $2 billion bailout announcement, you said that it was making the sector flourish. But isn't it really just making carbon tax Carney and Liberals'
You see,
bank
Mr.
accounts
Perkins,
flourish?
I have a lot of respect for you because you're a man of honor. But I don't think Canadians and democracy is well
Compliment.
served by comments like that and saying things that are not factually
I don't
correct,
think it's.
sir.
I don't think it's well
Canadians are
served
watching at
by
home. They
Liberals
And make him
enriching
seem out to be the
themselves
You're
liar.
an honorable
at
member of this
your
House, but I don't think that
government's
spreading
expense
things like
and
you're doing
taxpayers'
now and
expense.
Anyways, it goes on and on. He never answers the question. Guess what? This is your new finance minister, and he's also invested in, yes, a lot of these companies and corporations. Now, I don't have the evidence to throw out there and prove it. I'm just following certain links. The second I have real documentation to prove that, trust me, I will be putting it on future episodes. But I'm close. The sniffer's close. I'm finding more and more and more of these liberals that are all involved and all invested in through their blind trusts and all the rest of it, just like they were with the whole legalization of marijuana. Pretty funny that Bill Blair, the cop, had all this investment in marijuana before it was even legal. Should really make somebody think. Future episodes, I'll be dropping major bombshells. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I need all the help I can get. And Lord knows if I can get enough and I can actually start making money on this and I don't have to worry about working somewhere else and I can spend all my time doing this, Canada, look out. Look out. Anyways, I'm going to move on to just a couple little clips on how they also manipulate the masses. And it's how they appropriate and where they appropriate in order to control the voting base. So now we've kind of seen how they control the dollar how they hide the dollar through their own political ideas. So now Mark Carney has been using his political prowess, the fact that he's been telling Trudeau and all these liberals, they're all the same, lipstick on a pig. All they did is put lipstick on the same pig. You may be looking at Carney. It's the same pig. These guys are pigs. They're evil. They're corrupt. They use the masses in order to convince them that this party will do us good, whereas that party will only help the West, or they will only help BC, or they will only help. And 90% of what the center of Canada uses, they use hate and division against the West. That's been their, and this is why we're going to lose. We're going to lose Alberta and Saskatchewan if this keeps up. We're going to lose them. I'm almost certain of it now from what I'm seeing online. It is, every day I keep saying it, it's exploding. Like it is, the curve isn't like this. It's like this. It's crazy how many people are ready to leave Canada. And to them, they're not leaving Canada. They're taking Canada with them. They're leaving the socialists behind. They're leaving the CCP behind. And if you watch my episodes and pay attention to all the evidence and the proof, you will understand this is the case. So now anyways, now you buy votes. Now you've got the rich and elite pushing. You own the propaganda. Let's move on to how you take cities, which are major voting bases that control the entire demographics of a nation. First, you make sure you give them jobs. Even if they're not real, you just have to convince them that it is. That's all you got to do. Here you go. Low orbit satellite operations center is expected to create 300 jobs as the federal investment to help Telesat take on Starlink with New Quebec campus. Fear, hate, and division. Fear, hate, and division. Satellite communication giant Telesat received a further boost as part of its mission to take on Elon Musk's Starlink. See how now it's they just kind of do a continuation propaganda and reduce Canada's dependence on American technology. Propaganda, hate, fear, division. By the way, Elon Musk carries a Canadian passport. He was very proud of it. I still think he is. I don't really see him walking around with the Canada flag, but I know that he definitely talks highly of Canadians. He loves us, just loves us. The federal government has revealed that Telesat is constructing a new 25 million campus in Gatineau, Quebec. The facility across the river from Telesat's Ottawa headquarters. I could go on and on. Let's click to the next. Here we go. 2.5 billion to build satellites, better internet in remote areas. Satellite operator Telesat and producer MDA in Montreal's West Island gets the contracts. This just keeps on going. This is how we've been manipulated. Now, of course, like I said, they've done this for generations. But this party, oh man, once they had 100% control on the media, it changed everything. Everything has gone downhill. We went from a semi-social society who, yes, we always wanted to look out for our neighbors and we never wanted to see anybody left dying on the street. We're Canadians. We want to help others out. Semi-socialist to where we are today. Fascist is knocking at our door. Now, for the STDC corruption, the media probably never showed this. Lord knows I have never seen this talked about on media. And if you have, make sure, and like I tell everybody, unlike ideas for future episodes, whatever, please comment. I read all my comments. Trust me, I get a lot of comments, but I read them all. And I try to answer all of them. And your advice helps me build this channel. And it helps me understand my viewing audience, which will give you a better show as well. It works two ways. I need your help. I'm going to play this clip. This is a whistleblower on the STDC scandal. Listen very carefully to what he says and give this man credit because he's being persecuted already for coming forward, for laying the truth out. You can't whistleblow in socialist countries. You go to jail. The police persecute you, hunt you down. The government and the police will throw you in court and bury you under tax dollars until you choke to death. This is the country we live in now. Listen carefully.
The House of Commons.
Hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. As we proceed, I'd ask members to look at the guidelines written on the updated cards on your.
Sustainable Development.
That this committee has adopted a subcommittee report at our last meeting, and members have agreed to refer to this witness as witness 1. I would ask that you comply with this decision of the committee. So without further ado, I will turn to witness 1 for an opening statement.
Witness 1, the whistleblower.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak before this committee as part of your study on
the volume's really low, so I'm going to use my microphone in order to turn it up through my speakers. The release of the Auditor
General's report in June concluded a 2-year effort I initiated to expose how SDTC's idealistic mission was co-opted by a group of corrupt executives, board members, and insiders within the clean tech ecosystem. All or some, there's a lot of speech here. Frankly, I'm embarrassed to be here because me being here is an indication that the systems that are set out to protect people don't work. That's the biggest issue here, and I'll continue on my speech, but I want to make it clear that I'm here not just for SDTC, but point out that this should not have taken a 2-year effort to get to this point. And even to this day, real accountability doesn't exist. The Auditor General's findings conclusively validated and vindicated every single one of the issues I initially raised. Within hours of the report's publication, the minister dissolved SDTC, a clear indication of the severity of the misconduct. This decision should serve as further proof that SDTC was beyond repair, with corruption that was so badly ingrained that it rendered the organization unfixable. It also serves as the ultimate indictment against SDTC's leadership, who continue to work today.
By the way, That lady was one of the largest contributors to Carney's campaign.
I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Office of the Auditor General for its dedication to this inquiry and their wider efforts as one of the few independent institutions in Canada that continue to uphold public trust in a system that has become increasingly opaque and unjust. And just as I was always confident that the Auditor General would confirm the financial mismanagement at STTC, I remain equally confident that the RCMP will substantiate the criminal activities that occurred within the organization.
Now, the media did bring, not the whistleblower, but they did bring the STDC to light when they had to. And they even had the commissioner of the RCMP on the channel. But the way they worded the questions made it seem like this was no big deal. It's not really a scandal. Now, I am going to do probably a 3-part series on SNC Lavalin. But we know for a fact, broke stories, paper to prove it, in my previous episodes I've already shown it, that the heads of the RCMP branches are corrupt. And they have been proven to be protecting the Liberal government. In the case of SNC Lavalin, where they hid information, purposely didn't interview people because they knew they would have to go and charge a sitting prime minister and his staff, especially the Privy Council, who were involved, one of them being tape recorded, which no charges were ever laid against Wernick. He should be in jail. They broke the highest law of the land. They used the judicial system through their power in a voted elected seat in order to stay in power and control large corporations to ascertain not only votes, but support through money to their party. The entire circle of trust, the entire top echelon of government was shattered. The government should have fallen. And here we are today. Same old, same old. Now the STDC is even, someone would say, bigger. From what I've seen so far with a lot of these corporations that the money was given to, they all seem to be part of Brookfield. That's a funny thing. Don't you think the media should be talking about this, considering that the guy who ran Brookfield, the chair of Brookfield, is now our prime minister, unelected prime minister? Don't you think this should have came forward, seeing as how this is already over a year old, a year and a half old, that this should have been brought up so that he never even had a chance to become the leader of the Liberal Party? Propaganda, people. Propaganda. Our police are useless. They are an arm of the liberal fascist government. All branches have been infiltrated. Sam Cooper keeps exposing more and more every day. Now we have the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, Senate hearings, all of which are exposing the amount of corruption we have here in Canada. On part 2, I'm going to show you the actual documents. Yes, it took me hours. That's why I'm so late getting this out here today, because I have to reread it all, get all the fresh information showing on what GFANS did. And I'm even going to show you proof on how they're using Canadian pensions in order to take over Western Oil. Yes. Stay tuned. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and punch the like button so that you don't miss future episodes. Let's listen to a little wee bit more of this before I call it an episode.
Again, I accepted this invitation to come to this committee because I'd like to talk about the actual effort that was required to get to this point and what the continued lack of action by the federal government indicates about our society. Because the real issues extend beyond STTC's collapse. The true failure of the situation stands at the feet of our current government, whose decision to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems and institutions are being corrupted by political interference. It should never have taken 2 years for the issues to reach this point, and what should have been a straightforward process turned into a bureaucratic nightmare that allowed SDTC to continue wasting millions of dollars and abusing countless employees over the last year. The first government official that I approached was the Liberal Member of Parliament for Calgary Skyview, George Chahal, at an SDTC event all the way back in May of 2022. He assured me that he took this situation seriously and guaranteed that he would facilitate contact with the appropriate people in the federal government and the Auditor General's office. His subsequent refusal to engage forced us to spend the next 5 months trying and failing to contact various agencies, including ISED, the Ethics Commissioner, as well as the Public Integrity Commissioner, to name just a few.
Falling on deaf ears. Welcome to socialism. When you control and appoint positions, you can put up a brick wall. You can stifle any illegality or wrongdoing you're doing. This man is a hero.
It was only in December 2022 that I finally contacted the Auditor General's office, which set off a chain of events that finally culminated in the report in June. It took almost a full year after we initially talked to the MP that this file eventually ended up at ISED, who then hired RCGT in March 2023 to conduct a fact-finding exercise. This fact-finding was supposed to be a 6-week exercise with a simple goal to just validate the documentations that I had provided, with a stated guarantee that subsequent investigations involving the AG, ISED, and the RCMP would be initiated if any of those documents and allegations were proven true. By May 2023, ISED had already confirmed most of those allegations. RCGT had even drafted a report and provided a debrief to myself, with ISED bureaucrats stating their plan to make a recommendation to the Minister and PCO that the report be released and that at least 4 separate investigations be initiated and managed through a newly created office within ISED. All of this should have led to immediate action, but once those findings reached the Privy Council office and the Minister's office, everything changed. The investigation was delayed for another 4 months, allowing SDTC to continue misusing funds and mistreat employees, where at this point the federal government had in fact known that this was true.
Now, I am going to post the link to that video, like I do with all of my videos and documents, in the description below. I'm going to be dropping some huge bombshells on part 2, but I'm also going to record these for you, label them proper so they're easy for you to find, and I urge all of my viewers to spend the time, turn it on, crank the volume, and go about your day or put your earbuds in and listen to what this man has to say. This whole council. And listen to the deceit, the lies, the gaslighting, the gerrymandering, just the bullshit that comes out of the NDP and the Liberals who are sitting on this. They control these boards. All that had to happen is the NDP to get a spine for 1 second, and this could have exploded, and we would have a little bit of justice and a government that would have fallen a long time ago, and we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. The NDP are the Liberal Party, people. It is a uniparty. And you have the sap-sucking greeners who are latched on like a leech to the butthole of those two parties. And they'll do anything to stop the truth from coming out. This is why Drunk May is trying to call these parties and get a coalition to stop the Conservatives from getting power. I don't care if it's Bernier. I don't care if it's Poilievre. There are probably another 8 different parties, 3 that I know of, I would rather see get voted in than the NDP, the Liberals, or the Green. I'll say it again. We must decimate these parties. And if whoever gets in government next doesn't open everything up and start charging and exposing this corruption and changing rules so that this never happens again, then hopefully by then, people like me will have a loud enough audience, as well as a lot of other people like me who do this, can actually start to give new parties a fresh face and a chair in that house that we need. We need truth. We need the facts. We need the police. We need to solve this corruption. We have to fix this problem. It's out of hand. It is completely out of hand. That ends part 1. I'm going to do part 2. I don't know if I have time tonight to release it before a good time. I will release it when I'm done. I'll be up probably all night. I have piles of paperwork to go through and try and straighten it out. And of course, it takes me hours just to record these videos. I do get emotional and sometimes have to do a lot of clipping, cutting, editing, or complete retakes. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I opened your eyes. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget, if you are, punch that notification bell. It not only helps grow the channel, but it makes sure that you won't miss any future episodes. Lord knows, there's always a breaking story coming out of this channel. Until next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Alias Tagay.